Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Norveški liječnik urgentne medicine i anesteziolog Mads Gilbert 40 godina pruža pomoć u teškim izraelskim bombardiranjima Gaze. Sveučilišni je profesor i autor dvije knjige o Gazi. Trenutno je u Kairu, odakle tjednima pokušava ući u okupiranu Gazu. Dr. Gilbert, hello and welcome to the program of Al Jazeera.
Shukran كثير and good evening.
Can I ask you, for starters, how are you?
I am very sad today because I just received the message that one of my brilliant young doctors who I cooperate with and have trained during medical school, my Sarah, was killed last night in his home together with his two parents, his two sisters, and the two children of one of his sisters. So he was killed together with 7 family members, and I am extremely sad and I'm extremely angry that these good civilian peoples who has done nothing wrong but to be Palestinians born in Gaza are being killed by the thousands. Now they have killed 3,900 children in few weeks, and I feel so extremely upset that the world is not stopping this massacre.
You have been trying to enter Gaza for weeks now. As I said in the introduction, you're in Egypt. I have a very simple question. Why go to Gaza now amidst everything?
Well, it's a long-standing tradition in Norway that we send solidarity medical teams to Gaza and to the West Bank, also to Lebanon when there is attacks on the Palestinians. The simple word that is the answer to your question is solidarity. We don't want our friends in Palestine to stand alone. We know there are good doctors, there are very good nurses, very good ambulance personnel. In fact, Gaza has a first-class medical system, but it has been drained for 17 years of siege and so many attacks again and again. So now, when the bombing started, we decided to set up a team and we went immediately to Cairo, and we have been waiting in Cairo to be allowed in. But the occupant, Israel, is unfortunately not allowing anybody in. They are just keeping bombing and also bombing the hospitals, as you know.
What would you say at this moment, besides the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe, almost 10,000 killed, of which almost 4,000 are children, what are the looming dangers that that the healthcare system is facing now in terms of diseases, in terms of the more dire consequences coming with the situation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I mean, it's hard to imagine because we are so used to that our hospitals have electricity and light, they have water, and they have food for the patients and the staff. In Gaza, the Israelis have turned off the water, they have turned off the electricity, they have turned off the food supply, and they have turned off all the medical supplies. And because Gaza has been under siege for so many years, the storage and the supply lines are very fragile. So within days of this siege that has been going on for almost four weeks now, the hospitals were empty. So now what is facing healthcare in Gaza is 3 major things. It's the lack of fuel for the generators, water for the drinking and for the cleaning, food for the patients, and medical equipment and medical drugs. They are lacking security because they are bombed all the time by the Israelis and threatened to be bombed. And for the third, they are filled with refugees. Actually, there are 122,000 internally displaced Palestinians who have been seeking shelter in the hospitals. Mm-hmm. For example, in the Shifa hospital, there are 40,000 refugees. So every corridor, every room, every hallway, everything inside and outside is filled with these families that are seeking shelter. And they lack water, they lack food. And as we see again and again, it's been bombed in and around the hospital.
We'll get back to the hospitals and their new roles as refugee places as well. But for starters, you mentioned Shifa, and I need to start with this because it's been in focus of many media outlets, and a lot of discussion has been going on around Al-Shifa, which is the largest hospital in Gaza. It has, at the same time, as you said, been housing now tens of thousands of refugees and wounded. However, there's been a lot of talk about Hamas tunnels under the Shifa hospital. Before I give you the whole question, I would just like to remind, I would like to let you tell our audience that you also worked there. So from your experience, this is going to be your answer. On November the 3rd, Israel bombed ambulances at the entrance to Al-Shifa hospital after all of those claims. So my question to you is, since you have worked there, what are your experiences, or maybe better said, your knowledge regarding these Israeli claims, and what is the danger of these claims for Palestinian civilians?
Well, the danger of the claims are twofold. Number one, it takes the attraction and the concentration away from the main problem now. The main problem are the Israeli war crimes and the bombing of the civilian society in Gaza and the killing of civilians and children. That is what we need to discuss and stop. The Israelis have been claiming for 16 years that there are command centers for the resistance in Shifa Hospital. I've been working there for 16 years. I've been walking freely around wherever I want to go. I take pictures, I film, I talk to people, I open all the doors I want. I've never seen any command center like that. And I've never seen any of the figures that are the leaders of the resistance and Hamas. So I think this is very strange that the Israelis cannot produce one single evidence to put forward to prove that these claims are true. In fact, these claims are only made to take the attention away from the main problem, namely the way that the Israeli forces are constantly attacking civilian targets. And I'd like to remind you that when they bombed the Turkish Friendship Hospital last week, and when they bombed the Al-Akhle Arab Hospital 2 weeks ago, and when they were bombing Al-Quds Hospital last week, and today they were bombing the Rantisi Pediatric Cancer Hospital, they bombed the Nasser Hospital for children, and they also bombed the psychiatric hospital, the only one in Gaza. None of these hospitals were accused of having any command or military function, yet they bombed them. And the hospital capacity in Gaza now is down to 14 of 35 hospitals are now operative for 2 million people who are being shelled and injured all the time. And don't forget that in a population of 2.2 million, there are people who have myocardial infarction, they have a stroke, they have diabetes, they have pneumonia, you have pregnant women who needs to be treated. So they are actually destroying the whole civilian health sector, which is needed for the care of the people. So my conclusion is there is no proof of these claims. It's only a way to take the attention away.
You just mentioned pregnant women. World Health Organization estimates that there is around 50,000 pregnant women, and that more than 180 of them are giving birth per day. Women in labor are now, from the reports we're getting from Gaza, getting C-sections without anesthesia. Even if the question is how to help these women in these situations, or what more can you tell us about these examples of the humanitarian catastrophe?
First of all, I have seen no examples that my colleagues, my respected colleagues in Gaza, are doing major surgery without anesthesia. This is a rumor, and it's a rumor to sort of portray them as a very inhuman animals, as the Israeli actually call them. The Israeli Ministry of Defense call the people of Gaza animals. They are doctors. They have a very high standard of ethics and of medical professionalism. So they do not open the abdomen of a woman without anesthesia. That would be absolutely terrifying. You can find other solutions if a woman needs cesarean section. You can actually do local anesthetics along with the wound where you cut open, and you can do other techniques like spinal or epidural. So these rumors are not substantiated. There is a lack of local anesthetics, and it is true that there is a lack of general anesthesia, but they will prioritize and use the anesthetics for the most important operations. Now, why is there a lack of anesthetics? Yes, that's precisely because of the siege. The collective punishment of everyone, pregnant and non-pregnant, old and young, healthy and unhealthy in Gaza, are being punished for being Palestinians by not having access to healthcare, not having access to medicines they need. For example, there is a great lack of insulin now, and many Palestinians in Gaza have diabetes. So it's a massive attack on this medical system that we all need to survive. For the pregnant women, of course, there will be a lot of women who have early labor because of the stress of the bombing and the fear of being killed and losing your family. And that will lead to more premature babies. And the incubators in Shifa Hospital are already overfilled with babies, 4 to 5 in each incubator. And they need the electricity to keep the light and the humidity and the heat in the incubator. So the lack of fuel to Gaza, in particular the lack of fuel to the hospitals, I think I would call it sadism. It's a historical atrocity against the human beings, because these very vulnerable children, they will be without protection when the fuel is running out from the hospital and from Shifa. And that is by itself so gruesome that it is unbelievable it can happen in 2023.
Speaking of the years, you were in the Gazan wars back in 2006, 2008 to 2009, 2012 and 2014, attempting again now to enter. These scenes that you're describing now, from what we're hearing and what is being reported from Gaza, compared to everything you endured and everything you witnessed during your work, is there a difference? And if I can add, while reading some of your interviews from almost 10 years ago, I saw you using also the language of horrible atrocities happening, great crimes against humanity, and civilian losses. So could you just a bit put a parallel between what was happening then and what seems to be happening now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. And I'm a medical doctor from a peaceful country, from Norway. I'm used to have everything I need at my hand as a doctor. I'm an emergency doctor. I work on the ambulance helicopter. We have a very good system. So every time I've been to Gaza under these attacks, I have been thinking it cannot get much worse than this. That's what I thought in 2009 during Operation Cast Lead. I thought it also in 2014. And when I used the word atrocities and the crimes against humanity, those words were not only mine. They came also out of the investigations and the reports afterwards. But what we see today, no one has ever seen in modern times. No one has seen in modern times a governmental army incarcerating 2 million people and bombing them and their medical system night and day, and killing almost 4,000 children so far. There is, half of the population in Gaza are children. It's a very young population, extremely densely populated, nowhere to fly, no shelters. So if you bomb indiscriminately in these places, you will injure and kill a lot of children. So I think the situation now, it is not comparable to any other wartime situation I have seen and that I know from history. Because what the Israelis are doing now, it's not that they only are bombing, it's not only that they are bombing them and injuring them, but they are starving them. They are denying them the right to have water to drink. They are taking away the food. It's 4 to 7 hours waiting line outside the bakeries that are remaining to get a piece of bread. They're taking away all the supplies of medicine and fuel. In short, it's a massive attack on the Palestinian population in Gaza. And I think the goal is actually to kill them and to scare them to leave Gaza. It's incomparable to anything I've seen. And the sad thing is that the international community, the leaders, not the people of the world, but the leaders of the Western and the rich part of the world are standing by, clapping, and supporting this massive attack on human rights and on our human dignity without any reservations.
Dr. Gilbert, you mentioned this new role of the hospitals that they've had in the past month, which is being refugee spots around Gaza. Al-Ahli Hospital was bombed on October 17th, where around 500 people were killed. In the past 6 Gazan wars, Israel has had the history of also targeting hospitals. So all of the hospitals that you mentioned just now, it's not just this year, it's happened in the past. So from your point of view, how do you comment, especially from the experience on the ground, what does bombing a hospital in a city that is bombed, in a whole strip that's been bombed mercilessly for a month, what other effect on the whole situation does bombing a hospital have? Could you just bring that to our viewers?
I think that we all are looking for safety when there is danger around us, and in particular if we have children with us. And most of the families in Gaza, they have a lot of children. Then we seek security because we want to survive. When your home has been bombed, the neighborhood has been bombed, and there is somebody shouting to you, get lost, move, because we're going to bomb your neighborhood. Then you try to find some safe place. And the only safe places that are remaining in Gaza now for the homeless, who are, by the way, 1.5 million, it's the hospital. It's the nearest hospital. And they seek to go there, try to get there. They come there. There is still some light. There are other people. And there is a feeling of security because all of us, we think that nobody would bomb a hospital. All of us think that, when we get to the hospital, we're safe. Also, the UN schools are used as shelter. And you also think that, if we could get to the local school, we would feel safe. That's where our children are. That's where safety should be. Israelis are also bombing the school shelters with blue UN colors, like they did yesterday. They bombed 2 schools in Jabalia, killed 70, injured 60. So I think that people seek to the hospitals because it gives them a deep sense of security. Unfortunately, in these days, in these dark days, the hospitals have become traps for the local people where they get killed, like we saw when the Israelis were bombing the entrance to Shifa Hospital and killed a lot of people as the ambulances were coming back because they had been bombed. So I don't think I have any more words to describe my feeling about these attacks.
They're actually, hospitals are, instead of, as you said, safe havens, actually becoming another point of traumatization for the Palestinians. Dr. Gilbert, Israel has been asking certain hospitals in Gaza repeatedly to evacuate everybody. Could you tell us and our audience how difficult of a quest that is, and is it possible and reasonable?
No, it is not possible, and it is not reasonable to force the local leadership and the doctors to evacuate the hospital. It is illegal. It is illegal, and it is against international law. The hospitals are sanctuaries. The hospitals are safe places for people. You cannot force people to leave the hospitals. I don't know where the Israeli commanders are taking these rules from. They're at least not in international law, and they're not within the humanitarian law, for sure. And I tell you, the bravest of the brave now are the doctors and the nurses in the hospitals in Gaza, refusing to leave their patients, refusing to take the patients out to what they call a certain death. Also, the leadership in Palestine Red Crescent Society, the sister organization of Red Cross, have refused to evacuate the Al-Quds hospital, the second largest hospital in Gaza, for the same reasons. And I have good friends, good colleagues, like one of my best colleagues, he is in Al-Quds hospital. And I talk to him every day on WhatsApp. And he says, we've been bombed all night. They've been bombing around the hospital. They were injuring 10, 15 of the refugees. We have 12,000 refugees in the hospital. Are you leaving? I say, my friend, my brother. No, I'm not leaving. His family has been moved to the south of Gaza. He fears, of course, that his wife and his 7 children will be injured and killed. They fear that he will be injured and killed. This is today's situation in Gaza for the ordinary good people who are longing for 2 things: freedom, dignity, and equality. At the end of the day, what we see unfolding in Gaza now, it is brutal racism. It is colonial occupation, and it is a way of treating other people which would have been impossible if you looked at the other people as equal to yourself. I did a little calculation to try to get some numbers on the value of humans. During the Palestinian resistance attack in Israel on the 7th of October, the official number is that 1,400 got killed, among them 828 civilians, and among the civilians, there were 31 children. Now, no Israeli child should get killed. No Israeli child or civilian should get killed. I'm against any terror against civilians. Mm-hmm. Since then, no more Israeli children have been killed, but as we have talked about, 3,900 Palestinian children. So if you try to make the comparison between killed Israeli and killed Palestinian children, so for each killed Israeli child, there has been killed 166 Palestinian children. So the value of a Palestinian life is less than 100 of an Israeli life. Yet the whole world is talking about Israel's right to defend themselves.
Dr. Gilbert, if I can just ask you, we're running out of time. There's been humanitarian, the suggestions by the United States that a humanitarian pause with this wording would be one of the solutions right now. From your experience on the ground as a medic, what would that mean, and is that any kind of a solution?
It's not the demand of the United States. They voted against the demand for immediate ceasefire when this was debated in the General Assembly of the United Nations. They vetoed the same demand in the Security Council. Don't come and tell me that this is the idea of the United States. They are just pretending to be humanitarian. They are patting the back of the Israeli attacks. They are providing the weapons and the money to continue it. We demand, I think the people of the world, we demand immediate ceasefire, and we need to make a permanent solution to this horrible situation. And that is to get an end to the occupation of Palestine. It is to allow the Palestinians to have their own state. It is to end the colonial occupation of Palestine and the Palestinian people, and stop this ongoing elimination of the Palestinian people. Some short-lasting humanitarian ceasefire is not going to solve anything. Gaza will need a major international effort to rebuild, and we need to find a permanent solution, which is a free Palestine.
Dr. Gilbert, you told me the first time you visited Gaza was 1981, and you just mentioned how much money and effort will have to go into rebuilding Gaza one day when this war will end. Could you tell us a bit about Gaza back then versus Gaza today?
My first mission was with the WHO in 1989, and that was during the Intifada, and it was filled with Israeli soldiers. It looked very much like the West Bank. Lots of checkpoints, very insecure for everyone, lots of killing. And by the way, the killing in the West Bank has been also very aggressive. The last week, 136 were killed. So Gaza, 1989, was occupied. Then they left Gaza, the Israeli occupiers, and Gaza became sort of a mini Palestine. Hard to get in, hard to get out, siege, bombing, but still you didn't see the Israeli soldiers inside. Now you see them. Now they're killing everything they see. So it's never been a peaceful thing in Gaza. It's always been the presence inside or outside of the occupation forces, and they have never treated the Palestinians in any way that could be called a human way. So for the Palestinians today, they remember 1948, the Nakba, when all of this misery started. Today we see an avalanche of human suffering. It's 100% man-made. It's planned. It's meant to be. The 3,900 children is part of a plan. This is not a natural disaster. This is a man-made disaster, which can be ended in 1 hour once US stops supporting Israel and once the Arab leader turns off the oil and the gas to the US.
Dr. Gilbert, one more question for the end. There have been reports by different international organizations and eyewitnesses and footage about the Israeli use of internationally forbidden phosphorus in parts of the bombing of Gaza. Can you tell us about what white phosphorus does to a human?
Again, my friend, this is another way of taking the attention away. Every time there is bombing of Gaza, there's somebody saying, oh, is there white phosphorus? Number one, white phosphorus is allowed to be used in wartime, but it has only been allowed to use as a smoke screen. You can make a smoke screen to hide yourself from the enemy. Israelis are sometimes using phosphorus in Gaza, and it hits civilians. Yes, it does. But it takes the attention away from the big problem, which is the massive use of conventional weapons against the civilian population, which is causing these horrible numbers. So all the time they want you, the journalists, to discuss things that are in the periphery of what is happening. The most important thing now, it is the massive bombing with conventional weapons against the civilian population. It is the siege of Gaza, the strangulation of Gaza. It is the fact that they're not allowing neither journalists nor medical teams in because they don't want anyone to see it. And the most important thing is that we get an immediate stop in the killing, in the mass killing of Palestinians, civilian Palestinians in Gaza. That can only be done by world leaders who stand up, because we know what the people of the world want. They want this to stop, and they want to support a free Palestine and a free Gaza.
Dr. Gilbert, thank you very much for joining our program.
Thank you.